This is Ben here with Olson's Hi-Fi. I'm here this week with KEF's new R11 META. The whole R series has been completely revamped, and they've made some really great changes, including adding a bigger center channel, which was really needed to keep up with these larger speakers. The previous R2 center channel, did just fine with the R3s or the R5s, but it was a little bit out of place with the R7s. It did its job, but KEF did need a new center, and they've done that. They have the R6 META, and they're not calling those center channels. They're actually calling them just LCRs, or just so there's not R6C META. It's just R6 META because you can use them as a stereo pair, or you can use them as a center. Now, circling back to the R11 META, these speakers, the finish is no different than the previous. I mean, they're kind of virtually identical to the previous R series, and the previous R series looks fantastic, and so it didn't really need an update. But what they did do is they changed the crossover in these speakers, and of course, added the META material behind the tweeter. And I've reviewed a lot of META products, so just briefly, that's just a material that is absorbing distortions off the tweeter, and kind of the end result is that the treble section is a lot smoother, and it's warmer and more detailed, which is it's a hard trick to pull off, but the R11s have done it. They've also increased their dispersion, and so these speakers, the previous R11 didn't sound small by any means. They had a great room presence, but these really sound huge in a room. And in fact, one of our displays that we have set up for these, they're really far apart, and so normally we kind of stagger speakers, because just kind of keep a fair demo, keep them the same distance. But just because we are a little bit lazy, because this is the hi-fi store, right? We decided to leave them in place. And even really far apart, where a lot of speakers would just fall apart, these really maintained good imaging. And so that gives these things a lot of flexibility for placement in different situations, or large screens for home theater situations. But the sound is absolutely huge and extremely detailed. So it's like, when I was going from the Blade to the Blade META, I was like, how much difference could it be? And it's a big difference. It's really like it would be worth, if there were two coexisting speaker lines, the R11 and the R11 META, it would be worth paying the $1,000 premium or whatever to get the META. It's that much of a difference. At the time of this recording, the KEF R11 META are $6,500 a pair. At that price point, there's a lot of competition, but these are going to give a lot of those manufacturers a run for the money. The price increase over the previous model is pretty steep, but the META material upgrade on this makes it worth it. It's a difference you can hear. We have spent a lot of time listening to these speakers over the last several weeks, breaking in all of the META stuff and getting our impressions. And in the previous series, I had my favorites. The R7 was my favorite in the previous series. There was just something about the sound signature. It was just a little bit different, a little bit more forward in the treble, I felt like, than the R11. And so this time, I'm not seeing that same difference. This time it's even though these have a lot more of the bass drivers, and the previous R11s, I just felt like were a little more MIDI, and I appreciated the R7 because they were just a little more articulate, just a little more forward. These are a match on the R7 as far as the R7 META, as far as how forward these are. So out of this this new refresh of this model, these are my favorite. The R3s and the R11s are the standout for me. We've done quite a bit of listening over the last couple of weeks, and some of the songs that we've listened to, like the Nils Lofgren bass and drums intro. Of course, that's a fun listen. There's a lot going on there, but just really showed off how big of a stage these speakers had. And also like how tight and fast the bass is on these. and it was just really presented it in a lot of detail in a pretty large space. Another song that we've spent a little bit of time with on these is Chris Stapleton's Death Row. Now, that's a big voice, and these speakers do a great presentation on that. It really kind of gives you that, sometimes we're listening to that song and it kind of feels like it's, his vocals are down here, but these really present it like he's, up, and it just kind of helps to increase his presence. And so these are definitely kind of a large presence speaker. They're going to do well with, performances and recordings like Chris Stapleton. So another song that came up that is an all-time favorite for immersive stereo listening is Pink Floyd's Time. It's one of those songs that gives you instant recall, if you know what I mean. And again, these speakers just filled up the room with the bells at the very beginning. Of course, all great speakers do that, but the R11 Meta do have a particular characteristic of just having such a big sound stage that it just makes everything a little more immersive, and that's a general characteristic of all the Meta speakers that KEF has right now, is they just really present large stuff, and they're great for immersive stereo listening. But do not take my word for it. Come down to Olson's Hi-Fi and ask us to plug in these R11 Meta for you. Thank you.